Welcome to Application, the TYPO3 Community Podcast.
Hi, I'm Annett Jähnichen, and this is Application, the TYPO3 Community Podcast, sharing your stories, your projects, and the difference you make.
1, 2. Welcome to Application, the TYPO3 Community Podcast. I'm Jeffrey A. McGuire. You can call me Jam. And this is where we celebrate the TYPO3 community, sharing your stories, talking about your projects and the difference you make in, around, and with TYPO3 CMS.
Work in a middle agency in Dresden called webit. We are about 70 employees. We did websites and applications for our customers. And for example, we work with TYPO3 and Sitecore, or we produce Ruby applications. And I'm working on the TYPO3 department, and we did some websites for local tourism agencies or some transport companies.
Mm-hmm.
If you know, in Germany, Verkehrsverbund Rhein-Ruhr.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and we did the website for them.
I use their trains and their data feeds regularly. I have an app for that here.
Yes, but we did not do the app, but the website.
Nice. So do you do TYPO3, only TYPO3 at work?
Yes, the whole time, yes. I'm working as an integrator and developer, so my daily work is to transport the HTML and CSS stuff we get from our front-end department and transport it to templates for TYPO3, and we are also developing applications for our customers. So if they have individual stuff to do, so we could code some extensions, TYPO3 extensions for them.
And that's taking whatever business logic they need and whatever custom features they need and putting them together in a package so that TYPO3 will produce that and let them get on with their work and doing their business.
Right.
For people who are less familiar with TYPO3, this is a TYPO3 community podcast, but other people are allowed to listen. TYPO3 has a really, really interesting, I guess I wouldn't, it's not exactly a quirk, but on the one hand, it's always been a so-called headless system. TYPO3 out of the box, you can get some starter versions where you fire it up and there's a website, but out of the box, it doesn't have a front end, which is interesting. So it's been headless, quote unquote, forever. And that means that when it outputs the result of your business logic, you have always been able to choose, is it going to be a web service? Is it going to be HTML? Is it going to be whatever you like, which is really cool. And obviously, since it's API driven, it'll ingest data and queries from wherever and deal with them. So that's neat. The quirk, the unique feature is that TYPO3 has an integration layer and its own templating language to connect the front end and the back end or do some other tricks along the way. Can you talk about working in that layer? Like, talk about the job of the integrator a little bit.
You have to choose an engine or an extension which you can use for templating. We work with fluid styled content, for example.
Right. And Fluid is TYPO3's own open source language for that.
Right. Yeah, we wrote our own custom content elements, for example, which offers the needs the customer had.
Right.
We did some integration stuff for that. So you have to also write TCA stuff, table
configuration array.
Yeah, sorry. The template part, the tsconfig part for content elements, and the TypoScript part for content elements. So yeah, you have to know many configuration stuff, and also have to know for the templates we use Fluid View Helper, which offers with TYPO3.
Mm-hmm.
Or ship with TYPO3, and you have to know these view helpers and what you could do with them, and how you could format or manipulate your data you get from the backend,
right,
to have a good look on the front end.
Right, and I find it really interesting that when you're implementing the whatever you need for a specific project. So TYPO3 comes with a lot of functionality out of the box to make content-rich client websites. It's a kind of a tool by agencies for agencies. I find it really interesting that when you then need to add or change functionality, you have a choice of writing extensions that go into the back end and affect or change or extend core functionality, or you have this layer in the middle where you can change and influence inputs and outputs without actually touching the core, right? The integration layer does translations and additions once things have come out of the backend, and they can affect what goes into the backend at the same time. So it's kind of like an extension wrapper somehow at the same time, right? It's fascinating.
It's easy to extend this stuff because if you did not get or there does not exist a view helper which do your work or your job, then you can use given view helper and extend them and adapt them to your needs. And it's very easy because it's PHP and
essentially you're dealing with base classes and extending the classes on top of them. And it's totally programmatic and totally familiar if you're at all, if you've seen object-oriented code before.
Right.
So when did you discover TYPO3 and how did that happen?
When I guess it was in 2010, because I finished my university degree. Then I work for an agency, and they used TYPO3 in one project. It was the first time I get in contact with TYPO3. And since then, I'm using it every day.
Since 2010?
Yeah, it was 2012 where I switched the agency to webit. And since 2012, I'm working for webit and use TYPO3, yes.
So coming up on 11 years of working in TYPO3 full-time.
Right.
What is it that caught your eye? I mean, so somebody told you to use this thing, right? It just happened. Why did you stick with it? What was it that you liked about TYPO3 and that you're still doing it a decade later?
Yeah, I like that TYPO3 is very flexible in the use, because you could use it for very small websites, or you could use it for very huge websites where you did many extensions for your customer. And you could start with a very small website and use something like a Bootstrap package or so for your front-end output. And it's very easy to implement and to adapt them. In the next steps or in the next years, you could extend the whole website and use it. And it's very stable. Many installations work on the same version since years, and it works.
It's great that it's so stable, but if you're running a TYPO3 version 4 site live today, I'd like to know why you've stayed there, because it's not supported and maybe not secure like it should be. And because TYPO3, the stability includes really, really solid upgrade paths. So upgrading between the versions, if you don't do anything crazy with your extensions, is pretty straightforward.
I think it was worse since TYPO3 6.2, but it's even getting better. An upgrade between version 9 and 10 is very easy and very delightful, and also between 8 and 9 is also okay. Not so hard than switching from 4.5 to 6.2 and from 6.2 to another version, yes.
Those were the big hurdles, obviously. 6.2 is the rebirth of TYPO3 and the beginning of all of the PSR standards and the sort of roadmap and professional development strategy that's been going on for a while now in the community. So part of what I think would be great for the project is there was a downtime, there was a hiccup in between version 4 and version 6, and it's because there was a fork, there were some differences in opinion about how the project should go forward, and another project was born out of that time. I think that it's a great time now to introduce people to TYPO3, and I would really, really like to see it spread beyond Central Europe again. And I think it has a legitimate place on the open source CMS landscape, and it could really, really help a lot of companies do really great things. So that's part of what I want people to learn by listening to conversations like this.
Yeah.
So you're in the TYPO3 department, you said, of a 70-person agency, which is a decent sized agency. That's sized in Germany. I was wondering if you have any insight into how and when you choose, you being the agency and your clients, when you choose Sitecore, when you choose TYPO3, when you write a custom application.
We are not so involved in the whole process, but we are asked, or if a customer came and said, I want a website with this and this
functionalities.
Yeah, and then we could say, okay, with TYPO3, we could do this and this, or we could do it like that, and it costs an amount,
right?
And then decision is in our chief.
So you would talk with the sales team, and you'd say, for the thing that they're asking for, we would need 3 months work and 5 developers, and that means such and such time, money, whatever. And then I guess the Sitecore team could go and also give the same sort of information, right? And the custom application team maybe as well.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a conversation with somebody who is happy to sell both. I'd really, really like to know the differentiation, because from an open source perspective, right, and knowing that a CMS like TYPO3 can really handle a great number of use cases on the web, well, we always say, hey, the money you spend goes into features. Every piece of the budget goes into actual work, actual feature development, actual design, and we get this whole base system for free, right? And then when you talk about Adobe Web Experience Manager, when you talk about Sitecore, when you talk about the proprietary systems, the first money you spend is to buy permission to try to use it, and then see if it's going to do the job. It feels way less efficient to me. So I'd love to have a conversation with someone who will tell me why that's a good idea sometimes too, because I don't see it right now. Obviously, we're biased. So,
okay, then I should give you the number of my.
Right. And there we have the follow-up episode.
Yeah, right.
You're already looking it up. Okay, cool. That could be a fun panel discussion as well, because maybe like the people from the different teams could also compare notes on that. That might be fun. If anyone listening thinks that would be fun or interesting, please let us know in comments or social media or what have you, and that'd be great to know. I would like to know what your favorite features are of TYPO3.
I like that it's multilingual for general. I also like the configuration in the backend, so you could configure all, let's say, user roles or user access in very small parts, so that you can give your editors only permissions for the right things, and that you could extend the core. You could use the functionality from the core and extend it for your use cases.
I also like that you can apply hierarchical organization to a lot of different parts of the system, and you can configure your access on the page tree hierarchy. So you could have groups of editors working only on one website, or only in one language, or only on something, and that feels really, really powerful to me. And that hierarchical structure can be so many other things as well. I think that's really cool. That gets me excited every time. What is something that people don't know about TYPO3 that they should?
I think it's not so complicated how they think some people had it in mind.
Right. The back end years ago was very complicated and not very friendly. It's got really clear icons and colors. It's a great user experience now. The balance between flexibility and complexity and usability is quite good, for a professional system.
Could be better, yeah, but it's not so complicated how the most people think, because they only know the backend from version 4.5 or 6.2, and that was a little bit more complicated, and now it's more clear, and yeah.
Yeah. And the backend now is also responsive out of the box, and it works great on a phone. It works great on a tablet. That's pretty powerful. Not that I'd want to work on a website all day on my phone, but if something I need to do, it works quite well. It's easier than you think. Hey, that could be the new project motto. TYPO3. It's not as hard as you thought.
Maybe.
You've been involved in TYPO3 for more than a decade now, and you also contribute to the system. Would you talk about what the TYPO3 initiatives are and why someone should join an initiative?
Yeah, the TYPO3 initiatives are interest groups for TYPO3, maybe accessibility, or in my case, structured content. If you want to get some progress in this field, so you could join with other who are interested in this topic. And then you could create or found an official initiative for TYPO3, and then work on the topic and get some progress or some improvements, like the PVA or PWA initiative, or the accessibility initiative, and structured content. And we had the routing initiative, I guess, and they did a great job in the last versions.
How do I find these initiatives? If I'm not sure, how do I go and dive into something?
You could search on the typo3.org webpage. There's a whole page about all existing initiatives, and you can find information how to create or how to found a new initiative if you like. Or
if you have that much free time.
Yeah. And you could also find connections to existing initiatives. So every initiative has its own detail page on typo3.org, where you find informations about group members and what are the goals of the initiatives, and in which time frame they would like to achieve GitHub or Git projects, and so on. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we'll put the link to that page in the post in the show notes for this episode. Talk about the Structured Content Initiative. What is it? Why did you join it? And what's going on there?
In 2018, on the TYPO3 camp mid Germany.
Central Germany.
Central Germany. So we held a presentation about template engines and extensions like grid elements or Flux, or
there's a lot of competition in there.
Yeah, we compare them a little bit, and in our agency we use for the most projects grid elements or Templar Voila in old projects.
Right.
And there was always the opportunity to create container elements like 2-column and so on. We use this often for our customers to get them, or to let them create their own layout for the web pages. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge part in our daily work. And we ask, why is it not part of the TYPO3 core to ship that content elements. And that was 2018. And in 2019, we held another presentation on the TYPO3 camp, Central Germany. Get overview what's happened in this last year and what's not quite much. So yeah. And then Matthias Schreiber, the CEO.
Yes. CEO of the TYPO3 GmbH company.
Yes, give us the advice to do some Slack calls for interested people and talk about the topic. So we start with Slack calls in 2019 and discuss the first stuff. We compare different CMS and how they deal with this topic. And we compare, for example, WordPress or Sitecore or Neos. And and then we discuss what we understand when we say structured content, for example.
Right.
What is for us and what we want to achieve.
Right. So my question there is exactly what is structured content in this case? Because for me, having lived in CMSs, in content management for a long time, I see a separation between content and presentation. And if you say content element to me, I can understand that we want semantic elements like this field is a phone number, this field is an image with alt data, this is a title, this is a text, right? And that's semantic structure that I can then present how I want. And as soon as you tell me, well, my editor in the same place can choose 2 columns or 3 or something, that's presentation. And I wonder where how that gets sort of safely taken care of.
Yeah, because also this presentation is related to a hierarchical structure of content elements, and you have to save this also in the backend. How is this phone number related to a text box or a menu, or is it before or after? Is it mobile or not? And something like that. So yeah, it's really hard to explain, and we all have different opinions also in our initiative. We discussed that a lot, and we tried to find some topics to do for TYPO3 to even get it better for editors. We're working also for user experience, better UI for backend. We work on maybe a solution for a dynamic grid system in the backend.
Built in.
And we also work for create new content elements via Composer extensions. So you had a Composer package for your own content element, and you could registrate them with Composer installation.
So then you can manage them as dependencies, and you can version control them and export them to other projects, I guess.
Right. We're also working on rendering. We try to find a better solution for fluid style content. The idea is to ship rendering extension with every version of TYPO3. So you have the new stuff in the new version of TYPO3 and not fluid style content in every version. It's also a goal from our initiative. And yeah, we're working on that. And it's hard because we are not so much people.
Does that make it easier to come to consensus, but harder to get the work done?
Yeah, because many of us are more related on the concept. We did at first, for example, create some personas.
Yep.
And now we are working on user stories to find ways to explain how the behavior in the backend could be better.
Do you have an example user story there?
An editor wants to create a custom content element with the new custom content element wizard. I don't know. Sorry, I have to look up. But you could find some user stories in our GitHub project.
Great, but I mean the fundamental is somewhere how the developers and the business need structured data that we can use for every purpose now and later. And the editors and the website visitors need to put it somewhere and know where it's going and make sure that it's easy and usable to consume, right? So that the marketing team can convince them to buy a demo, to get a demo or buy a widget or whatever. So it's a really, really interesting crossover of problems there. You could make it super easy for the editors and make it terrible for developers, like some systems do, but making it great for everyone, that's a really, really interesting challenge.
Yeah, but I guess in the last few versions of TYPO3, the focus was more on developers and integrators to get some new stuff for them. And it's also important to get some output for the editors so they had better behavior when they do their job.
I've been in the CMS and open source world a little longer than you, and I come from the time where it was all developers and only developers, and open source stuff never looked pretty because who cares about pretty? It has to function right. Over time, when that sort of person was the only sort of person who could build you a website, then you got what you got. But now people have really, really beautiful experiences on these supercomputers that we carry in our pockets, and they expect things to be easy and they expect things to work. So we really, really have to live up to that sort of expectation, because otherwise, if they start complaining, somebody will hear the complaining and then they'll be like, let's find something else. And then if we care about our system or the sustainability of the project, we have to focus on that as well.
Yeah, also sales arguments for marketers is important. So if they have to explain why the customer have to choose TYPO3 version 10 instead of 9 or 8,
right?
Then you have to find some arguments. Then you could do this and this better.
That's an interesting question, because at some point in late 2020, I would only ever offer someone a TYPO3 10 site first. And why would I offer them a version 9 site right now? It's still supported for a while, but
or to get arguments for the upgrade. So
and then it's tricky depending on the sale you have to make. I can sell the upgrade easier to a developer who knows, oh, well, now we cover middleware, the PSR middleware standard, and now we do this and this, and we've re-implemented the such and so. Like, that's all easy, but explaining the business value of upgrades is trickier, right? Do you ever talk with the end clients about that sort of thing?
We did a user survey for our initiative, and we asked editors many questions about how they do things in the back end and how they create content elements and how long they need for this topic. And it was interesting. The results were very interesting. Yeah. And we work with these results to get better decisions on what we plan to do with the page module and something like that.
The other old problem was we built what we thought people wanted without asking them what they what they did.
That's what we did not want to do.
What was the first version of TYPO3 that you encountered?
4.5, I guess.
4.5. Is it still your first love, or do you have a favorite version?
The version 10.
Version 10 is your favorite. Version 11 is going to be your favorite, and version 12 is going to be your favorite. Is that how it works?
Yeah, because the improvements are even getting better. Yeah.
What's the best thing about version 10 that is better than version 9?
Better than version 9? Oh, I did not know if there's so much visual difference between 9 and 10, but there are some improvements. But under the hood, it's more improvements for developers, like PSR standards or implementations for extensions.
Right. So version 10 was a cleanup release in the grand semantic versioning tradition. Deprecated stuff was dropped and everything was made as stable and as clean as possible. And because TYPO3 does semantic versioning, then during the major release cycles, the core team can actually add functionality within the major version, which is pretty cool. So then the big development jump doesn't come at 10.0, it comes getting to the long-term support version. That's the thing that I hear. There's lots under the hood for developers that's nicer and cleaner. And frankly, for end users, the fact that it doesn't look much different at all to version 8 or 9 is great, right? There's a usability concept, a UX concept that's really familiar, and you don't have to spend time teaching and helping people cope with something radically different. So I think that stability, that goes to what you were saying about installations that run for a long time, about consistency, about easy upgrades. I think that adds to the sustainability of the system, and it's a good argument for why to invest in this, because I think you can get a lot out of it over the years.
Right.
I like to do a little thing on the podcast called the Suggest a Guest, and I'd like to know who you think I should talk with, apart from your sales team, because that's super interesting.
Okay, then I have to give you the phone number of my boss, maybe. Yeah, and for instance, my suggestion would be Rachel Foucault. Did you know
Yes,
her?
board
Yeah.
member. She's great.
Yes, right. And she's working also for our initiative since last year.
Right.
And do a lot of work in UI and UX experience as a user experience, and did a great job for our initiative and the many work. And she's an interesting person from France, and so
Yes, she's great. I know her and like her very much, and she will definitely be on this podcast. So
okay, good.
thank you for that. You have used TYPO3 a long time and contributed to it, and part of your contribution is now in this structured content initiative. Can you tell me about a time that the community helped you?
A lot, because I was participate on many TYPO3 events like developer days or bar camps. And even if I had a problem with a project, then I could go to the people from the community and ask them, what could I do? And they give me advice and say, look there, or use this function, or get this an extension for that. And yeah.
So people are generous with help and information,
Yeah.
sharing it. Nice. Who stands out? I don't know. Is it someone in particular? You said everyone is ready to help.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Because I get help for solar extension. I get help for security issues. I get help for front end groups I get help for using TYPO3 with PostgreSQL instead
Nice.
of MySQL.
Yeah.
I get help for using grid elements and what could I do with that and what could I not do with that, for example.
Are you just as helpful? Are you also answering people's questions and ready to help them when that comes up?
When I was asked from someone, then yes.
You are just as generous with sharing what you learn when you get the chance to share it, right? If somebody comes to you and needs to know something.
Yeah, because for example, in our agency, we also had new people or new employees, and I'm sharing my knowledge with them and try to get them involved into TYPO3 and explain TypoScript or tsconfig and something. So I share my knowledge with them. Also, if you ask me something about our initiative, I could give you an answer.
Right.
And I present our progress on bar camps, for example. Yeah.
Plus, when you get the juniors in your office, the first thing you tell them is clearly, look, it's not as hard as you think, right?
I wish I could do that. Yeah, because the most point I get from them is why we have to use TypoScript. Yeah, I could.
And what do you tell them?
Yeah, because it's part of TYPO3 since years and it works. Yeah, but maybe in the future we get better solutions for that, and make.
Right, and TypoScript is an essential part of that integration layer that we touched on earlier in the conversation.
Yeah, we also had the goal in our initiative for the content blocks registration API, or the content block registration, to use more symphony types in your definition of your content element. Now we have to map this with TCA.
Yes.
Maybe in the future we get more together with symphony types, for example, instead of TCA.
That would be interesting from a compatibility angle. I think that it would be a more quote unquote standardized way to work nowadays. And I wonder if it would help build shareable applications and extensions. That's so interesting. I'm going to have to think about that. Now, I'd like to share a personal moment. Annett's family name has my favorite sound in German, and the one that I worked on really, really hard when I was learning German. There's this very soft, gentle sound. And as a foreigner, you have to learn to say ich, right?
Yeah.
And then Jähnichen is so Jähnichen. And then the other thing, of course, I live in Cologne, and I am a proud what we call an IMI. Do you know what an IMI is?
No.
An immigrierter Kölscher.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
And so the Cologne dialect, there are several German dialects that do this, but Cologne, they use what in German it's called the Verniedlichung a lot, which is like you take the little version, like I don't know, in Scotland you say like a wee something, a little bit. In Cologne, you don't have a Karte, you have a Kärtchen. Whatever a Janich is, right? Then you have a Jähnichen, and it just feels like so nice. It could almost be something Rhinelandish. So
okay, good.
Cool.
So we only had friends in Bonn.
Bunch and Kölsch are very similar, but they're not quite the same. That little, they're right on the border with Rhineland-Pfalz, and they're still Rhinelander, not Pelzer, but it's already plus they got to have the government for all those years, so they think that there's something special in Bonn. You have to keep your eye on those. Buncher. Yeah. Hey, it's been really, really, really great talking with you. I've really, really enjoyed it. I'm really, really grateful that you could take the time to talk with us, and on your week off as well. Thank you so, so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for your contribution. And I hope if we can ever travel or do events again, I would love to hang out at the TYPO3 Camp Mitteldeutschland. That would be super, super fun.
Yeah, maybe next year it's in Leipzig, if it's possible.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you had the opportunity to come to Dresden, then I will go with you and show you my city. And
fantastic. And can we drink a Zwickel?
Zwickel?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, it's a deal. So, and Dresden is a really, really, really beautiful city, and it was terribly, terribly, terribly damaged in the war, and they have spent the entire time since then fixing it, and it is wonderful. There are some of the best museums in the whole country, especially if you like art. Dresden was the first place that I drank a beer called Zwickel, and if you like beers, Zwickel is a Pilsner, but it's not filtered, so it's cloudy like a wheat beer, but it's a Pilsner, and it's great. And Annett is there, so there are many, many reasons to go to Dresden.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks to the TYPO3 Association for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you B13 and Stephanie Kreuzer for our logo. Merci beaucoup Patrick Gaumont, TYPO3 developer and musician extraordinaire, for our theme music. Thanks again to today's guest. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe in the podcast app of your choice and share Application, the TYPO3 community podcast, with your friends and colleagues. If you didn't like it, please share it with your enemies. Would you like to play along and suggest a guest for the podcast? Do you have questions or comments? Reach out to us on Twitter at TYPO3Podcast. You can find show notes, links, and more information in our posts on typo3.org. Remember, open source software would not be what it is without you. Thank you all for your contributions.
I had vacation this week, so
nice. Okay, where did you go and what did you do?
Nowhere, because we celebrate a birthday from my son at the weekend, and now it's free time and only sitting on the couch and watching Netflix. And
so you're in the middle of your vacation week this week?
Yes.
And you're talking with us. Thank you so much for taking time out of your vacation to talk with us. For our listeners who are not German and not in Germany, there is a typical word for a staycation in Germany. So Annett, let's see where did you travel to on your vacation?
To the Eastern Sea.
Ah, When wait, but are you in Dresden now?
Yes.
The word that I was looking for was Balkonian, right?
Yeah.
And this week, as we say in Germany, Annett is in Balkonien, which is a German joke word for means you stay in your own place and your vacation is on your balcony if you're lucky enough to have one.
Yeah, but the balcony is very cold outside this week, so yeah, we
Right.
stay indoor.